Is this it? SpaceX's Starship is gearing up for the Superheavy catch. What is still missing? The second Starship launch mount has arrived at Starbase? Is the FAA holding up the Starship launch process? We have at least some news on a possible Starship launch window for Flight 5, and Blue Origin risks it all. Will they destroy the landing boat? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It. Let's dive right in. Starship updates. This is footage that went straight into the spaceflight history books. But why? What makes SpaceX's Starship so important and revolutionary? Isn't it just another rocket, but larger? This is Starship, the world's largest, heaviest and most powerful rocket ever to exist. This SpaceX-designed rocket was conceptualized by the visionary Elon Musk to lower launch costs to space as much as possible and eventually colonize another planet. But like most rockets, first it needs to transition from a visionary concept to a real and reliably working solution. The soil this rocket launches from is located in southern Texas on a beach by Boca Chica Village. A little village in the south of the United States of America might be on the brink of changing history forever. Named Starbase to reflect its endeavors, SpaceX has been developing this site specifically for Starship development since late 2018. I first visited this place in early 2020. In a little more than 4 years, it's developed from a tent city to a massive, buzzing engineering hub. So can SpaceX be successful with this, or are they just burning money? Time has flown since then. SpaceX now has 2 massive launch towers which can theoretically support at least dozens of launches each year, all towards reaching the goal of a reliable design. To date, 4 Starship rockets have made their way away from this site into space with more or less success. This is because SpaceX is currently in its development testing phase. As funny as it may seem, exploding starships are what's needed to improve the design. Each flight has focused on something different, with the first focusing on liftoff, the second on reaching space, the third on proving orbital capabilities, and finally the fourth on surviving re-entry and splashdown in the ocean for both lower and upper stage, booster and ship. The 5th launch continues this pattern, as SpaceX now plans to recover the first stage booster. The next step needed to get into payload territory. The next step needed to make a Starship useful for the first time. Starship is made up of 2 parts, the Starship upper stage and the Superheavy first stage. Both are meant to be reusable in the end, and both are meant to be caught out of the sky in this crazy catch maneuver by the launch towers. Catching the booster won't be easy at all. Catching the Starship upper stage will be even harder for SpaceX, as the technology to re-enter a rocket at orbital velocities and land it have barely been tested. First things first though, remember, Flight 5 is all about the booster catch. Technologies for this type of catch have been tested throughout SpaceX's Falcon program, which has the core fundamentals of reusing a vehicle. So SpaceX already has a good chunk of the needed knowledge, at least for the booster, even though Falcon 9 boosters land on ships. There is not that big of a change needed when moving the landing site from a barge to a tower. Currently, SpaceX is gearing up for that 5th orbital flight campaign, in which this maneuver will be tested on one of their newest vehicles, Superheavy booster number 12. The structure beneath the tower, known as the orbital launch mount, is being prepped for booster 12's arrival, which will happen in the coming days. However, this is not to be underestimated. It is some of the most minuscule work around the site. As we mentioned in our last episode, SpaceX is still working on the catch arms, also known as chopsticks, attached to the side of the tower. These arms are the focal point of SpaceX's crazy catch maneuver. One question frequently pops up in the community. Why would SpaceX use these arms instead of a perfectly fine landing pad? Well, it all comes down to the equipment needed to process a Starship through the landing and recovery phase. SpaceX wants to maximize how much payload a Starship can take to orbit, which means getting rid of as many unimportant components as possible. This includes landing legs. Wait, what? The legs are not important? How can that be? Although they look rather slim on other rockets, the mechanism needed to deploy them is complex and pretty heavy. If SpaceX gets rid of them by instead equipping the tower with arms, it means that Starship can take that much more payload to orbit. The chopstick arms are just external landing legs, only Starship doesn't need to take them to orbit with it. The other reason has to do with a quick turnaround of the vehicles. Quick and safe, that's what Starship is supposed to be in the end, same as today's sponsor. For today's episode sponsor, I want to tell you something about safety and security. Two very important rules most people don't stick to just because it's added work. I get that, who wants to do extra work, right? There's an easy fix, you don't have to do anything different. Just download Surfshark VPN. It's a VPN. Protecting your connection is key. Did you know that while surfing the web, you're exposed to many risks? Data breaches, hacking attempts, and snoopers. What the heck is a snooper? It has built-in antivirus. Do you know what a data worm is? Or a Trojan horse? Nope. Who cares? You don't need to know that. The only thing you need to know is where to get Surfshark. It'll help you without extra work, remember? Have you ever had your identity stolen? Your email address, your ID card, your credit cards, fun stuff. Do you need to learn how to protect yourself from that? Nope. Surfshark will automatically notify you when it happens, or you can just create a brand new alternative ID with proxy email, all included. Get the idea? Surfshark does all of this all the time without the need to change anything. Make sure to take your whole family with you, as Surfshark lets you use the service on an unlimited amount of devices, all covered by Surfshark VPN. Use our code Felix at the link below and get 4 months extra for free. Surfshark, surf with your own set of rules. Safe and protected, let's keep going. SpaceX is also trying to increase the number of times they can launch per week or even day. Falcon 9, with its 9+ launches per year, is not fast enough for what SpaceX is planning. It requires them to be able to reuse boosters and ships as quickly as possible. If SpaceX needs a large crane and transporters to recover a rocket, that will add to the time. If all they have to do is move the tower's arms to set it back down, they can almost immediately begin launch operations again. Think of it more like a gate at an airport rather than a traditional rocket pad. It also has the added benefit of not having to ready the landing legs again, as they have to on a Falcon 9. This saves hours. As you may know, Falcon 9 can't retract its own landing legs. It's a lengthy procedure every time a Falcon 9 booster arrives here at Port Canaveral. Of course, they could develop a system that does it automatically, but as I mentioned earlier, that would just add to the weight. Now you know why so much work, time, and resources are being poured into preparing these chopsticks. Did you know that the chopsticks are that important? We're not done, there is another important reason. But before I tell you about that, we've looked into our channel metrics, and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. And while you're at it, give us a like and become a wise supporter. Why? Because you'll gain access to a massive amount of extra content. With it, you get access to daily new Starbase photo galleries, including all those we've posted so far. Satellite, aerial, and ground photos, more than 400 posts in the past 2 years alone, with up to 7 picture galleries per week. Insights, chat with me, you name it. Thank you so much, you rock. SpaceX is still waiting on approval from the Federal Aviation Administration to attempt this wild maneuver on Flight 5. And so they are just using every second they have to make sure they're as prepared as possible. Of course, they would try launching now if they had received the license at this point, but since they haven't, they'll continue working on those 2 arms until the very last second. Any questions? Be sure to write them in the comments. Now that you're an expert on starships as well as the launch tower it launches from, let's look at SpaceX's brand new tower, which has only been under construction since June. For this, let's move to the area that once was known as the suborbital site. SpaceX launched all the spectacular looking high altitude flight tests from this end of the launch site. Now it is home to SpaceX's Pad B. Since we were just talking about chopsticks on Tower A, let's look at Tower B's chopsticks. Now, where are those? Where Tower A has some beautiful strong arms mounted on a movable carriage, Tower B has nothing yet. There is a twist to the arms for Tower B. If you know those for Tower A, you'll spot a significant difference. Let's see if you catch it. The chopsticks for Tower B are currently located at the Sanchez site, about half a mile up the highway. This is where all of the sections of this tower were located prior to their relocation to the launch site for stacking. This allows more work to be performed on them, as they are only needed at the launch site when they are being mounted. So how about that important change on the new chopsticks? Did you catch it? Let's do a side-by-side comparison. Take a look at this. Yep, it's pretty obvious. SpaceX has built T-Rex arms for Tower B. They are much shorter. Why? One leading theory is that SpaceX found out through some simulations that the arms just don't need to be that long. At first, this feels like SpaceX is just making the game more difficult without reason, but on second thought, if the longer chopsticks really aren't needed, why have them in the first place? Now here's the question you likely all have. When will they be mounted? When will we see the T-Rex arms on Tower B? You get it. Thankfully, we've seen some progress towards this. Since chopstick mounting is a complex maneuver, SpaceX must prepare for it. They have to be lifted from one side of the tower, the side the orbital launch mount sits on. On the first tower, this was no big deal since the OLM was this tiny ring that sits atop 5 legs. However, the new launch mount for Tower B will be much larger and accommodate a flame trench as well. A massive departure from the original design. Likely at least partly caused by refurbishment and maintenance problems. Take a look at this. That's what the first tower launch mount looks like right now and what it looked like between every launch so far. Dozens of lifts desperately fighting for some room to work. That's clearly far from ideal, especially considering that starships are supposed to be rapidly reusable. Nothing about the current process is rapid. This means that SpaceX is likely trying to stack these chopsticks before the OLM or orbital launch mount is in the way, since they can position them right underneath where they need to go. Makes for an easy lift. Now here comes the clue. We saw large mats being positioned in the area where the OLM foundation is being constructed. These mats help distribute weight of large objects such as cranes or, in this case, chopsticks. It's very likely that the chopsticks are destined for these and that once they are rolled to the launch site, they will be set on them. Then lifting can commence and the new tower can finally enjoy some noodles. Okay, that makes sense, but can we go back to the picture of the launch mount foundation real quick? Something has changed. Can you spot it? SpaceX teams have been seen installing these large sheet piles outside where the OLM will sit. These almost draw the silhouette of our speculated design from a few episodes ago that SpaceX may go with. It is very interesting to see this next generation launch pad come together right before our eyes in such a speedy manner. We will keep following this mega engineering project for you. Remember to subscribe. Now let's move to the production site to check out the work on the next prototypes to fly. As we leave the launch site, you'll notice some changes to a long-lasting prototype that's been left here. Starhopper the Eternal. This was the very first Starship test article and the first vehicle in the world to ever take flight powered by a full-flow staged combustion cycle engine, SpaceX's Raptor. Before the days of full-scale test tanks and ships, the shorter Starhopper was developed to demonstrate the concept of the Raptor 1 engine. After its low-altitude hop tests, it was displayed at the launch site and functioned merely as a water tower. That seems like it might change, however. It is scrapping time. Yup, it is technically already been turned into a pile of scrap. End of story. Gotcha! Just kidding, they would never do that. The reality is that SpaceX wants to relocate Starhopper. No scrapping is planned as far as we can tell. But why move it? It is likely not the reason you suspect. As SpaceX extends its orbital launch farm to support not 1 but 2 towers, changes have to be made to accommodate it. While the craft is not hindering tank farm construction yet, since SpaceX plans to continue expanding, it will eventually get in the way. This move will make way for that new endeavor and help distance the vehicle from the fiery inferno at liftoff. It's my precious little Starhopper. SpaceX doesn't preserve many vehicles, but Starhopper seems to have some fans at SpaceX as well. Thanks for saving Starhopper, guys. You rock. Okay, back to where we were on our trip to the production site. All the construction of vehicles is done here inside a couple of different buildings. Ship 30, the next upper stage to fly, was rolled back to the production site a while back. And this is where it stayed since. The ship hasn't moved for weeks now. It is sitting in the rocket garden ready for final checks and a launch at the pad. It recently got its decorative decal as well as other minor preparations, literally just finishing touches. But that's it, the prototype seems to be ready. Ship 30 will remain at the Rocket Garden until Booster 12 is set on the pad for a wet dress rehearsal. So that gets that prototype out of the way, and since Booster 12 will be incredibly hard to see until it makes its way to the pad, let's take a look at what else is being worked on at the production site. Actually, there is one more prototype that's been receiving significant work over the past couple of weeks. Ship 31. This ship is slated to fly on Starship's 6th orbital flight campaign and is currently getting a makeover. Due to the fiery catastrophe that plagued Flight 4's re-entry, both Ship 30 and Ship 31, the only remaining Block 1 prototypes, had to get heat shield replacements. SpaceX simply got its first real data on how that first concept of a Starship heat shield worked on an actual re-entry. Let's just say there were some hotspots left to deal with. Ship 31 has been in this step since early August, in which teams remove all the existing tiles and lay down a new protective material before replacing them with stronger ones. It is almost done with this process, and it won't be long until we see it standing by to fly. And if the FAA really does what they said about the flight licenses and not changing the mission profile, Flight 6 should be way quicker than Flight 5 was. Besides all the prototype work, SpaceX also needs a place for its engineers to think and plan the next crazy idea. Welcome to the office mezzanine. Steady work continues. Our on-site photographers, Jordan and Sean, captured teams continuing to install glass panels alongside the building. The metal skeleton of the connection between it and the Star Factory continues work as well. Soon the two buildings will be one, and they'll have a nice big window for us to see through. Kudos to SpaceX for keeping some transparency. They wouldn't have needed to do this. Now here's the question you've likely all been waiting for. When will we finally see Flight 5 fly? It's incredibly hard to put a date on it because the FAA is still missing some paperwork from SpaceX, but sources have told us repeatedly that SpaceX is still aiming for the second half of September. There you have it, fingers crossed for a fast paperwork process. Other companies are not nearly as open as SpaceX is regarding internal work. One such company is Blue Origin, one of SpaceX's biggest competitors, even if it doesn't seem so yet. For the past 12 years, they have been working on their next generation heavy lift rocket, New Glenn. We've discussed New Glenn's readiness in past videos and have mostly concluded that it will be ready to fly this fall. Blue Origin plans to launch not earlier than October 13th. That's a little more than a month away. Can they make that happen? They're planning to launch NASA's Escapade probes to Mars. On paper, that is an easy task for New Glenn. In reality, it is a heavily tested prototype. Blue Origin certainly isn't sitting around. There is a worrying part to this mission, however. Similar to the way SpaceX recovers its Falcon rockets and plans to recover its Superheavy rockets, New Glenn was built from the beginning as a partially reusable rocket, very similar to a Falcon 9. There is just one such story so far, but what we do know from it is that the path to a reusable rocket can very well be covered in rocket parts. SpaceX faced many issues, even getting its Falcon 9 rockets to land on the water for testing purposes, let alone on a boat in the middle of the ocean. A similar thing was seen with the Starship when SpaceX tried to land it softly on the water and it broke apart upon impact. Blue Origin still seems to have its heart set on recovering its very first New Glenn rocket booster. This was confirmed by an ex-post from Blue Origin. This is the plan they posted, with a picture of the brand new recovery vessel nicknamed Jacqueline. Jacqueline, named after Blue Origin owner Jeff Bezos' mother, has already arrived in Florida. The plan seems solid, as we've seen rockets being recovered hundreds of times, but there are a few problems along the way. Let's jump back to SpaceX's struggles in the beginning. It might not come as a surprise that these happened on their first attempts. SpaceX has a whole video showing all the times they messed up before successfully recovering a Falcon 9. It is an excellent example of SpaceX's failure culture. Embrace, laugh, learn, and move on. That's the spirit needed during these times of repeated failure. Focus on the goal and iterate like there is no tomorrow. Keep in mind that New Glenn has never flown before, which means that Blue Origin lacks any actual flight data, especially fall data. While they can run simulations and have likely been doing so for years, nothing compares to real-life data. SpaceX likely ran the same simulations before getting into production on that funny landing failure video. This is why New Glenn's inaugural flight is shrouded in mystery. We don't know what'll happen on or at least close to October 13th. In the best case scenario, everything goes perfectly and the first stage booster is successfully recovered. One could even say that because the booster would already go into the ocean, it is no big deal. Unfortunately, there is a second option as well. In the worst case scenario, they could see their booster and their landing platform Jacqueline destroyed. This would be a setback for the recovery of any further boosters. Without a platform, they can't land any rockets. This is the first time we've seen Blue Origin proceed with a seemingly hardware-rich design, which seems straight out of SpaceX's playbook. The problem is that a boat takes a while to repair or even rebuild. Whatever happens during this inaugural flight, excitement is guaranteed, and I, for one, can't wait to see it. Hopefully Jacqueline fares well. Good luck, Blue Origin, and if it doesn't work out, laugh, learn, and move on. To show that a launch attempt in October might actually be in the cards, Blue Origin just announced that a static fire of the second stage is right around the corner. 2 BE-3U engines will roar to life. The stage is already at Launch Complex 36. If everything works out, a wet dress rehearsal or a separate booster static fire should be next on the agenda. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and it does help us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you again in the next episode. Mount Schland. Yes. Visited this. All towards reaching. Gotcha. Gotcha! And early, yoo-hoo.